What's up, Jet Setters? John Crestani here. Now, I want to introduce you to one of the top podcasters in the world, consistently top 10, Ryan Riddle. And am I pronouncing that right?
Close, Niddel.
Niddel,
yeah.
Niddel, okay.
The same.
And we're going to be talking about how to grow a massive audience, as well as also just you're working on a coaching platform to help people figure out. I mean, what is the goal? What is the big goal of it for people?
So the goal is, let's take you and I for instance. Right, we all have a pathway. We have a map in our brain. Right, we think the same way we think. We've experienced the same things we've experienced. But inherently, there's something inside of us that knows we want more. But most of us don't know how it's really possible.
Of
course,
100%.
So myself and a couple guys from inside of the neuroplasticity research department at Johns Hopkins and a couple of psychologists and psychiatrists from Harvard have developed this.
What is neuroplasticity?
Neuroplasticity is essentially you have neural pathways in your brain, right?
Okay.
We can talk, I call them trauma troughs for the lack of a better term. And so we've all experienced things, right? Like let's say you had to put your dog down as a child, he got old and you had to bury him, right? That creates something inside of us that is a memory. And that memory, most of us were never really taught how to process an efficient usage of instances in our life, right? There's things that go on and most of us were never explained, right? You learn how to read, write, but nothing with emotions, especially as men specifically, right? Like you don't show emotions, you don't show vulnerability. And so what happens is that memory gets stored, and human beings are consistently working towards efficiency, right? Like homeostasis in most creatures, the ability to come to a sum-zero center. Yeah. It's something that's present within 72 hours for most of us. And so I bring that up because let's say, again, you lose something of value to you right now. Maybe it's not a living being, maybe it's your cell phone.
Sure.
Right? But it's valuable to you. Your brain is pre-wired to automatically take that and push it right back to the same part of your brain that processed the memory of your dog died. So great, right? That's the neural pathway. Neuroplasticity is now the study that you can move those pathways. They don't have to be ingrained in you forever. You can do things to remold your brain and figure out how to make it, essentially operate more efficiently, more effectively. And that's what's been very interesting. This test that I have, it's life optimization test is what it's called right now. It gives us an ability to see literally the pathways in which your brain work and then give you an actionable plan to maneuver those into something that you want to serve you, right? Like what's important to me from where I'm at in my life might not be the same that's important to you. It might be, but it might not be, And so the biggest thing to do is understand how each of our brains work and then create a path of training modules and things that can help you benefit your life based off your individual results. It's not a one size fits all. We've had, just over 1,500 people take the test so far. There has not been 2 people with the exact same results. So we all are truly unique and individual based off how our brains work, but we've all had our own unique experiences, right? There's reasons our brains work the way they do.
Now, I mean, this is obviously a huge concept, and as we're both considered educators in some sort of sense, or teachers. I mean, you reach hundreds of thousands, millions upon millions of people, and same thing with I think we're all kind of battling with this issue is how do we, we've obviously gotten some level of success in our life, and we're thinking, okay, how do I pay it forward? How do I pass this knowledge along to others? And I think we're both doing it, but you're looking at it as how do I get into how the brain. I mean, you're doing well. You're doing reasonably well as an entrepreneur, as an influencer by any standard. What pushed you to? I'm guessing this take a lot of time and effort. What pushed you to make this leap to okay, you're doing well, and now, but you're gonna try to create this I don't even know what to call it, assessment to. I mean, that's huge if you can actually get it work. And I don't know all the research behind it, but
of course,
that's a huge project. That's a huge, that's a multi-year thing. You could be making a lot more money. You could spend that time partying, vacationing, making more money. Why? Why are you doing this thing to help all? Yeah.
So I'll say a lot of it's a season of my life, right? I've been
Okay.
through the big swings of success, right? The six-figure months pretty consistently, the businesses that go from conception to scale to exit, those have been things that I've been very fortunate to experience. And I did all the partying. I did the multiple cars, the houses, right? Like, we can dive as deep into that as you want to. Like,
Yeah,
the
sure.
$100,000 nights in New York City were almost commonplace. Right?
100,000. Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. I mean, some
Fun.
pretty wild stuff back then. And admittedly, then on the backside, I ended up losing everything. Right. I started another business, a high-risk merchant processing business.
Oh, nice. That's a good
And
way to lose money.
Yeah, it was great until it wasn't. Right. I look back after 12 months, and not only to operate the business for those 12 months, but also that $370,000 took me to write a check to shut down the business.
Oh, jeez.
It's like all of a sudden, all the money that I thought I had sitting around, I no longer had.
Yeah.
Went through truck repossessions and really went through, like, my life went from top of the mountain to bottom very, very quickly.
Interesting.
And on the backside of rebuild, and had some more successes, and have realized right now that as long as I have I'll say my carnal needs met, right? And we all have what we can dictate those are, food, shelter, travel.
You said car only?
Carnal, like
Carnal.
the
Okay,
internal
yeah.
things.
Food, shelter, whatever. Yeah.
There's this a famous psychologist named Maslow. It's Maslow's hierarchy,
Yeah.
right? The base level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As long as I have those met for what means importance to me, how can I make a bigger impact? But it's twofold, right? Because I've spent enough money on personal development. I've spent enough money on coaches and mentors and things. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, because I was a guy that was lying, that was cheating. Like, I had multiple girlfriends, failed businesses, ample, used steroids consistently for 10 or 15 years. Like, had a bunch of stuff. I started taking stock of my life. I was like, I don't feel good, right? Like, money is not making me feel good at all, right? And it's not that the lack of money would make one feel good either. It just, for me, it was, okay, if that's not fixing it, maybe there's somebody else that can quote unquote fix me. And through that entire process, realized I didn't need fixed, right? I just needed a little tune-up, right? Who I was as a person and what was inside, although it was in this shell and shroud of, muscles and 4 or 5 individual girlfriends at a time and, like, really crazy stuff, right? Like, and we can dive.
So bad for you. No, I'm joking.
No, I mean, well, they all thought they were my one and only, right? There's a distinct memory I have that I came home from a business trip and pulled into my neighborhood, and as I'm pulling in, there's 4 women bickering on the front yard.
Are you kidding me? This is like a movie.
I'm like, what is this? And I park and I'm like, I know all these 4 women. Like, that's because they're all my girlfriends and none of them know about each other. And so they had all figured out through social media and all these crazy things. We're talking now 6 or 7 years ago at this point, but here I am. They're all like, I'm the only one, and none of them were the only one. This was months and months, like the longest girlfriend I'd been with for 2.5 years, right? And just a really.
Okay, you have to finish this story. What happened? What happened next?
So they all wanted to know why. They want to know the hows. It wasn't super aggressive. Everybody was. 2 of them ended up becoming very good friends with one another based off of meeting each other through the trauma that I had created. One of them ended up sticking around, right, and wanted to rekindle things. I had the story running in the background, and again, we can dive really deep into this. At 17, I moved out on my own.
Okay.
My mother was dating a guy that was a pretty bad alcoholic and used to come home and try to fight me. And
Shit.
I was my height. I'm 6'2", and I was about 165 pounds. Like very very skinny guy. And that created, between that and when my father and mother were married, my father was a very hard worker, but was very strict, probably even a little aggressive, right? I would say there's multiple times where he took some of his aggression out on the way his life was on me as a physical person. And so I looked at those 2 things together and moved out and moved on my own. I had this thing where I never wanted to be alone, right? Like I know this now in my 34-year-old body. I had a fear of being alone, and I had a fear of conflict. So that's a perfect recipe for it. Although I knew if you and I were dating, look, there's nothing wrong with us, right? As a relationship, this is working. It's just not working as well as I know it could. And it's not because I haven't tried. It's just we're not really compatible. So instead of sitting down with you and saying, I appreciate this, but this isn't going to work, I would just leave myself open to a new opportunity. And when the new opportunity came in, I grabbed that one and I'd wait and see if it was better because I didn't want to be without. And then all of a sudden, well, that wasn't too bad, but now I don't want to break up with either one because neither one were perfect, but they had the pieces and parts that the other ones have. And this just kept going on. Like, this was my entire 20s was just, I'd like to say it's debauchery, right? Because you think the one-night stands, you think all the things.
Lots of girls, lots of money.
Yeah, but it was much more like I was very slow to jump into bed with these women. It wasn't a thing of like, oh, I got to close them and which I think is a story that so many of us have in the background, like that makes us more of a man. For me, it was I wanted that intimate relationship. Like I wanted to find the one person to make me feel centered and happy, and I kept searching for it everywhere else. The only place it could ever really be found was here.
Interesting.
But I didn't know that at that point. Like my perception didn't show that to me. It wasn't until I started really figuring out these pieces and parts, which that started to come with, old habits die hard, and I certainly was not a quick learner. Oddly enough, I would call myself intelligent, but not when it comes to women. So all these happened, I'll say 6 or 7 years ago now. I'm down to the one woman that stuck around.
How'd they all end up on the lawn together at the same time?
Social media, right? So I didn't have social media back then. Even 6 years ago, no Facebook, no Instagram, strategically, because number one, I would tell everybody I didn't need it or want it.
Yeah.
And two, it was because I knew I would get caught, right? Because everybody wants to post pictures of
Oh,
their boyfriends.
interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Tag you. I'm like, I don't need it. It's a college thing. I'm too busy for this, all this stuff.
You said you were busy, and I see you out and
And so I'll say the main girlfriend, the one I've been with for the longest, saw a image that was posted from another girlfriend where I was skiing with her. Like they somehow had a friend in common, and all of a sudden it pops up on her feed. And she sends me a picture. And she's like, "What's this?" And I just don't even answer, right? Because there's no. How do you get out of that, right? You don't get out of that.
Yeah.
And so, from those two communicating, then another one of the girls saw the same picture, and it just so happened the fourth girl was coming to meet me at my house when I got home from my trip. So she was just like happened to pull in, and these three girls are waiting for me, and it's like, hey, here we go. All right. Yeah, and so as it progresses and forwards from there, the one woman that stuck around, the one woman that stayed with it, I knew it wasn't a good fit. It wasn't necessarily a healthy relationship. It was good, but I knew I was capable of better. And I ended up meeting who is now my wife at the gym I work out at. We spent a couple months, not even going out, but I was with somebody else, right? And it's like same story, right? I'm going to date two people at the same time, and so I don't drink coffee, but I went out in the morning to get who is now my wife, my girlfriend then, a cup of coffee. Pull back in my neighborhood, have moved houses now, have done some different things, and there's a white C-Class Mercedes in my driveway, which happened to be the car I had bought this other woman. So
you buying them cars?
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice.
Breast augmentation, surgery, helping pay off mortgages, like you name something. I did all that. Yeah, and so I had another blow up right now. This is the first woman. She's been through this twice with me, so she's very distraught. Who is now my wife just sits there and is just confused, right? Because we've been together 4 months now, 5 months, and there's been no part of our life together that would let her think that there's somebody else, right? Like she would have thought she was the one and only. And she left, and everybody left, and I felt a sense of relief finally, right? Like there's no girl around. All my stories are out. At that point, gosh, I'm 30 years old. I got a little bit of money in the bank. This feels good. I can start over, right? Oh, I love my wife. She calls me back at like 7 or 8 o'clock that night. Says, hey, and I answer the phone. I'm like, look, if you're going to yell at me more, if you need to get more stuff out, I get it. I'm just kind of over it for today, right? Like,
I don't want to.
I've had like 6 hours of you guys beating on me, rightfully so, but I'm just good. She goes, no. Oddly enough, it's not like that. Something tells me to come back and see you. Like, excuse me? Because we're all biased, right? But I find my wife to be incredibly gorgeous. I mean, gets hit on consistently. Was getting hit on when I was with her. For all intents, there's no reason she should have come back. And she comes back, and we have some more conversations. We slowly, heal our relationship. And she eventually sits down with me and says, you're capable of a lot more. And it was the first time in my life that clicked. Like, man, somebody stuck with me. They didn't leave me. They didn't abandon me. She didn't yell or fight. She's like, you are a greater person than how you're acting. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. What do you mean? And she explains it to me. And that really opened Pandora's box for personal development for me, and going, Tony Robbins route, and then a guy named Garrett White and Wake Up Warrior, and some of these different check boxes along the way that I've been a part of, and spent tons of money on it. But it's the best money I've ever spent, right? Because it's really recreated who I am now. I'm married, would never lie, would never cheat. Like, they're not even things in my vernacular, really. But all that led me to this thing of, okay, how can I make an impact on people from a coaching practice, right? So I feel called or compelled to help others, right? I've spent the money, I've got the certifications, I've done all these things. How can I add value to people's lives so they don't have to live the way that I lived? Because I know there's a lot of people that have everything from feeling like they're not enough, to not want to be alone, to thinking they are alone. Like, they things, right? I believe we all want to live what I'll call an optimized life. And so I believed, no different than you and I sitting here right now, that when you start to do the right thing and you meet great people at the right time. And so I happened to meet these researchers from Harvard and Johns Hopkins.
Interesting.
Haphazardly. I didn't seek them out. They actually, based off the podcast, reached out to me and asked if I wouldn't mind taking a test that they created. I said, of course, absolutely. Take the test. It's very clunky, it's ugly, it's on Google Docs, it's very clinical, it's cold, it's a miserable consumer experience, like atrocious. Take it, they don't explain to me what it's for, they don't explain anything like that. Then they eventually called me back 2 weeks later and read me my results. And the results were so incredibly telling to me that I didn't have a tribe, right? I didn't have men in my life that could support me that weren't related to business, right? Because as entrepreneurs, we always have people around, right? You call you, hey man, let's talk about some traffic, and sure, so we have a friendship. I don't have the guy I can call and say like, I hate my wife today. Not that I actually hate her, right? But we have those days where there's those emotional dumps that we do. And so when I started looking at things like that and started looking at how really small my ego was from all the things I had done in my life, I had these stories running in the back of my head that I was just never going to be a good person. I was never going to be enough. Because the actions I had taken didn't line up with somebody of a high moral fiber. Didn't mean that I was inherently broken as a person. It just means I made bad decisions. So I started seeing this on this test. I'm like, okay, this is pretty strong. Like, what should I do with this, right? You told me something, great, I consume it. But no different than anything you teach. The consumption of something is great, but it takes applicable action to make any sort of change. So give me a couple action items between, friend circles and things like that, exercises to increase what I call a healthy ego. I don't think ego is the enemy. I know there's a book out there somewhere. I think an unchecked ego is the enemy. I think we all have to have some sense of who we are and what our worth is. Self-awareness, of course. And so after working on that for 2 weeks, I reached back to myself. I gotta help you guys. Like, what can I do to propel this business? I have this podcast that gets however many hundreds of thousands, millions of downloads, whatever it is on a daily basis. Can I just promote this? Like, are you guys able to scale? Like, can I have people go to a website and we don't know anything about business, we don't know anything about marketing, we don't know how to build a website. We were hoping you would eventually reach back out. We'd love to partner up with you. I said, okay, well at this point, I still, as of right now, have a marketing and media company, graphic designers, PHP, like all the pieces and parts. Content writers are all internal for me. And so, sure, what's it look like? And so we structured a deal, and over time that deal has, waned and waxed and weaned a little bit. It's changed based off, just being a businessman, right?
Sure.
Make sure to put yourself in the best position possible.
Sure. Obviously, you're a good business person, so.
Trying to make sure I'm doing the right thing by the right people, but I'm also past the point of doing things where I'm not valued based off what I'm putting in.
Sure.
And so, throw those pieces and parts and doing the right thing at the right time. Have access to this and design the website. It's still beta, right? It's still not beautiful, but the results work, and the results work very, very well. And so in this, I wanted to clean up the coaching industry, right? The coaching, the mentorship industry, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Inherently, again, I don't feel like people are flawed or broken. What I feel like is, though, it's such a low barrier to entry, right? If you have Instagram or Facebook, you can all of a sudden put on there, I'm a coach.
Everybody's a coach now, yeah.
I get it. Like, we all have to start somewhere. I'm not knocking that journey. What I am suggesting is there's a better way to start to make sure you're making a healthy impact on people's lives, right? Because if people trust you to be coach, there's an intimate bond that gets created. Whether you want it or not, it's there. Okay, so by nature of that, you have the ability to really potentially harm someone, right? Like, you could ask them to do a whole bunch of crazy things that you don't really know if they work, you're just trying them out. But all of a sudden, we can kind of regulate that, right? Because you have a test that people take on an intake form. It shows you, intellect and ego and all. More variables than I can count. Your results that are not beefed up are still like a 25-page, and every page has a bunch of data about you. And then you can create a coaching protocol based around the specific needs of a person, right? So it's no longer, well, here's a 12-week syllabus, and here's exactly how it works. Like, think of how we all are in the education system, right? Whether it's high school or college. You sat down the first day, here's your syllabus of what we're going to do. How does that really work, right? Like, you don't know how my brain works. Like, I get those things you have to teach us, but what if I'm the advanced one and I can get all this stuff done in 6 days? Like, why do I have to sit here for 6 months? Or vice versa. What if I'm the one that's more introverted and a little slow to consume information? Maybe it's going to take me 8 months to do what other people think it should be 6. It's a recipe for disaster. And so this test, as it keeps getting massaged and matured, is a recipe to stop the disasters of the coaching industry. It's to make it so there's a balancing act, but it's not only coaching. we get into everything from dating, right? Like that's one of the big telling signs we've seen so far. If you and your potential partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever you'd have, start both taking the test, and there are key indicators that your standard deviation, the standard amount that a test can swing back and forth, if you're more than 2 standard deviations apart, we've seen so far a 92% failure rate in your relationship inside the first 18 months.
Interesting.
So now all of a sudden you start really thinking, it's like, okay, well, how much time, energy,
This is
effort,
data
money-
you're collecting ongoing data with some of the people that.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. So it's the same thing as it comes to hiring and firing practices.
How many questions is the test, and how often do you follow up with these people?
So right now tests are 580 questions. It's nothing you're going to get done in 30 minutes,
Yeah.
right? Like this is not some sort of figure out what Disney princess you are on Facebook.
How long does it take?
Depending, I'd like to tell people to have an hour and a half to 2 hours set aside for it. You don't have to take it directly through. You can come back and revisit it a few times.
And how often do you follow up with everyone to kind of see where?
So as far as the clinical
yeah.
studies with the dating people, like we've got groups of people.
Oh, so you've been doing clinic? Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Those are like, that's not the Google Doc thing. That's a more intensive,
Yes. As far as for my clients, they get followed up with consistently, right?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing the test, and I have them retake the test every, really give or take 6 weeks for the first 6 months. Again, and we can keep monitoring. Like, okay, like this changed. Like this is like here's who you were. You're just a hyper-aware, hyper-vigilant version of yourself now. Like you're not changed as a person, but the way your brain fires and what's important to you, and realizing like, why is it that I feel so lonely all the time? Well, sure, like if you're an introvert, it could be natural you're going to feel lonely sometimes, but there's nothing wrong with being an introvert, right? Like that's not inherently a bad character feature. But we have to discuss in an intake call, does that serve you or not? What are you doing for a career? What do you wish you were doing for a career? How's your family life? What are the pieces and parts, and how do they all go together? And then talk about, does being an introvert, if you feel alone, does that actually serve you, or is that a story you're running in the background? And all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't know. Great, there's a good chance of the first time you've ever even considered it to be a possibility that there's a different story to run. What if I could show you how to take it from, your introversion score is a 98 and your extroversion score is a 12? What if we could level those out? What if we could have it be 50-50? Do you think you could feel better? Yeah, that'd be incredible. I don't like being the quiet one in the room. Great, so I'm gonna make sure as we work together, as we go through this protocol,
Interesting.
it's gonna be tailored into having consistent exercises to help you feel better, but not, I don't believe that thing of, kick somebody in the back and knock them in the deep end of the swimming pool, right? That's a recipe for disaster. That's not long-term and scalable. What is long-term and scalable is small incremental changes. Darren Hardy's Compound Effects, a great book, big favorite of mine. It's just small, daily, consistent actions, right? And holding people accountable to that. For everybody, no different than as we look at your business, right? We all need a map for success. And a map's not something you're going to hold out and read. I look at this as mentorship, accountability, and a path, right? You need
mentorship, accountability. Yep. I like that. You need a map.
You need a map.
Yeah. Mentorship, accountability. Yeah. That's good.
And so that's what comes down to this, right? Like so much of coaching, you need somebody that you can trust and believe in that has already been somewhere.
Everybody's looking for the just the P. Just what's the path? Is it it's like I know a lot of my people are just like, is it Shopify plus drop shipping? Is it Amazon FBA? Is it but yeah, mentorship and accountability are
you gotta find
so freaking key, and not just, and as you said, not just mentorship. Everybody can listen to your podcast, but that accountability element is so key.
Yeah, really, no matter who it is for accountability, right? Oddly enough, our interview, our time together is not a cheesy ploy to get somebody to sign up for coaching. What it is these programs, these theories, this map idea, it works, right? Like I don't care who your mentor is. Your mentor can be the guy you're listening to on the podcast, but you got to have somebody in your life that you don't want to let down, that you trust to hold you accountable. Typically, we lean into our spouses, right? I see you and I are both married, right? So, but for most men specifically, that's a very unhealthy relationship to create because we don't want to be demasculinized by our women telling us that, look, you said you'd do this, you didn't do this. Get your shit together. It doesn't work. We need someone in our peer group that we don't want to let down, that we commit, that's not going to judge us, right? And that's where it gets really tough for most of us, right? Like none of us want to show that vulnerability. None of us want to say to our friends, look, I'm going on this program. I realize I don't like the way I'm living. I want to live this other way. I have a path to get there. Can you hold me accountable? Because it would make you, in the male sense, feel like you're less than, right? Like you're weak. Why do you need this? Because we all do, right? Like there's just some of us that have succumbed to the fact that being vulnerable is not a weakness, it's a strength. And so for me to say to my coach or mentor or the guys I'm working with currently, like it's the other thing, you get into this world no different than yourself. You have to have consistent ongoing education, right? Like if you just stay stagnant and there's no external stimulus, like you're not growing, and by that you're not growing and everybody else is, you're almost retreating.
Yep.
Right? So it's having the ongoing coaching and mentorship to hold me accountable, right? There's things I want to achieve that I need the mentorship of someone that has grown and scaled into a $100 million business, right? I haven't seen that before. 40, 50 million I've been, but I haven't been to 100 million. Well, why try to wing that? Like, why would I guess how to get there? Like, why
makes no sense.
Pay the guy what he's worth. It's going to teach me a new skill set to get me to that level that I want to be at. It's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
But it takes time to get to that thought process, right? Like that. If you would ask me that 5 years ago, I was not in the place mentally where I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm in. I'll pay for that. Like, no, I'm not. I got this. I'll figure it out myself. But here I am as a 34, almost 35-year-old man, and think of all the time I wasted by having that ego, which was the enemy at that point, right? Because it wasn't actually serving me. It was protecting me from something that didn't need to be protected from.
Was it the do-it-yourself ego?
Yeah, of course, right? I got this. I'll figure it out. I'll read the books. And it works until you try your first thing. And you're like, this is it. I'm gonna crush it. I'm gonna make the money, and then it falls flat on its face, and it all burns down.
Like, oh, it's such a good concept. Merchant process. Oh shit, I didn't have the legal, the fat. Oh shit, I didn't look at those things.
Yeah.
I know. One of my favorite stories is one of my he's my best friend. He was in Guatemala. He grew up and he was in college there, and he was just like looking out the window at class. He was a freshman. He's just like, parking lot is right outside, and they're all driving like Camrys or like Toyotas, and he's like, I want to be rich. Why am I learning from these people? And he just got up in the middle of class, in the middle of semester, and he said, I'm going to Chicago. And he says, and he's like, I need to learn from people who have actually been there and not this BS. And I think that's the problem, is like the way the system is structured is people don't have this system to learn from, especially in business. Of course. It's all changing. But so you created this test, this assessment, and I remember you showed me some of the results earlier, which is really interesting. What I want to ask you is, I think this is fascinating because I've been, on both, on the coaching industry is really complex. As you said, anybody can be a coach.
Yep.
I've been going through this. How do we train our coaches, but how do you really quantify this stuff? We're at a place in, I think, society where we're moving towards self-actualization. We're really starting, we can get the data. You said you need 10,000 records and you'll be able to basically create something crazy.
Yeah, we have deep learning and artificial intelligence from Caltech and JPL through a company called Beyond Limits that's revolutionary with how it works for marketing and all types of things we can discuss, of just how it can take large data sets and see things that you or I could never ever, we'd never be able to get there, right? Imagine I bought the license based off of wanting to know exactly when to market to the right person at the right time.
I think it's awesome. Now, what I want to ask you is, this is just an idea, but what is if I have coaches that work with my program and that work with my students, and I'd love to have some sort of resource like this in their hands, but even so, I feel like interpreting some of the results, like the one thing I saw was like interpreting and being able, as a coach, as I said, I have a bunch of coaches working for me, to give actionable advice to my students. And my guys are creating online businesses. Mm-hmm. Do you offer any sort of resources that show them how to interpret results, or would you be willing to do a recorded call at some point with my coaches to help them interpret results if I require all my students to go through it? Because I think that's, because I think that's the barrier to entry here, but I'm not sure what your thought is on that, or if you've already thought this through. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, we're working on building out right now what I'll call a certification program, right?
Exactly where I think the opportunity is, but yes, go on.
Because I want to make sure that
I think that's smart.
To whom much is given, much is expected.
Yeah.
Right, and when you're given I will shift the term map for a second. Actually, we'll talk about a physical map you're holding in your hand.
Okay.
If you have a map of the United States, it's not inherently good or bad, right? It's just a map.
Mm-hmm.
You're just looking at a piece of paper.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to conquer, we're in Texas. If you wanted to figure out how to, really own Texas, you could use a map to set up, military forces, and you could get Texas to, leave the Union essentially. I mean, maybe not everybody has guns here, but whatever it would be. That would be a bad.
I think they might even want to anyway, so you wouldn't have to convince America to kick them out.
Right.
But go on, yeah.
So that we could say the map in that aspect is bad.
Yeah.
But for me, living in Columbus, Ohio, if I want to drive my family to Orlando, Florida to go to Disney, the map is great. Like, it's the best thing I could ever have.
Uh-huh.
Well, same thing comes true as we have the map of how your mind works, right? If I'm unscrupulous, if I don't know all the clinical research, if I don't understand all the terms behind it and how to make meaningful, impactful changes based off of true psychological tests and evaluations, then I just have the ability to really mess with somebody. So our vetting process for seeing how someone becomes a certified in this methodology, it's figuring out how to make sure it doesn't get in the wrong hands, right? Because if I know there's a term called sadism, right? And that's our ability to hurt ourselves or hurt others. Mm-hmm. If your sadism score is high and I see that, but you don't understand what that term is and you just trust in me, and I've had a bad day and I want to mess with you, I'm going to encourage you to find more conflict in your life. I'm going to encourage you to go out and yeah, the guy that pissed you off, it's really healthy for you to confront him. Well, it's not. Right? Like, you're already hypersensitive and wired to that, and unless you're, playing professional football or, in the armed services, those are really not healthy things to have bottled up inside of you. We actually have to find a release valve to bring that score down and have actionable steps over a 12-week or 16-week or 6-month program to get you to not feel that way, right? Because most likely there's some unrepressed or some things that are still suppressed inside your body that we need to get rid of. So those things are the things of, sure, anybody should take it. I want your coaches to be able to have it, but I got to make sure that the people that know,
that makes sense,
know what they're doing.
That makes sense. And yeah, obviously, anything, my audience, they want to figure out how to be more successful as on their own outside of a job. So,
yep.
But dude, that's awesome. Well, I'm trying to think. We probably went longer than usual, but dude, I think it's fascinating, and I think what you're doing is so awesome, and I like how you're solving for a big problem, and I'm really interested to see where everything goes. So, thanks for watching. I'm putting a link down to this assessment that you can take down below. It's really interesting. Check it out if you have the time, and if you're at that point in life where you believe you can use some of that extra direction or just self-awareness that it brings. And I actually think self-awareness is one of the sexiest traits. But
by far.
Yeah, by far. Women love it. But yeah, thank you so much for being on here. I'm gonna link to your podcast and stuff. And
excellent.
Anything you want to leave people with?
Really, I think the biggest thing that runs in the background is you're not alone. Right? Like I think, when I poll the 1,500 people that have taken the test so far, everybody at some point feels like they're alone. And whether you're alone in your struggle, whether you think you don't have a voice, whether you lump all that stuff together, that you find someone you can just speak to, right? Find a mentor, find somebody that will prove to you there's a path so that you're not alone, right? You might think you're crazy because you want to make the money for yourself, you want to be self-employed, nobody thinks that way, your family didn't think that way, so you're all alone. You're not. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, you're point proven in how you coach and what you train on and your program. So you're just not alone.
Interesting. Dude, that's awesome. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
man.
my friend.
Yeah, awesome.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. And if you enjoyed this and you want to see more, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, or comment. And if you'd like to actually learn how it is I run my internet business and make piles of money like this, make sure you click the link below in the description or in the first comment, and I will show you. Peace.